Hello and welcome! Today I'm going to give you 20 summer book recommendations. Before we get into this too far though, I did want to remind you that I have a summer book recommendations video from last year, and I have tried to collect books this year that are not the same. So I will be sure to link that video in the description box below. So if you want almost 50 books to kind of consider for your summer TBR, then this video and the one I'm linking down below should get you about to 50. So to start, I am going to share a couple books for a childhood summer theme. So for that category, I have two books that I really love and am so excited to share with you. So the first one is Noel Streatfeild's Magic Summer. There is also a British version of this that I think is called The Growing Summer. The American publication is The Magic Summer. This book also has these beautiful illustrations from Edward Ardizone. In this, we have what's on the cover as a story of mystery and adventure in Ireland. We've got 4 siblings. They are in the Gareth family, and it's Alex, Penny, Robin, and Naomi. They all similar to another book that I have shared recently that Noel Streatfeild wrote, their father has had an injury and the mother needs to go to the father's side. So that means the children need to travel to Ireland to live with their great aunt Dimphna for the summer. Their great aunt actually raised their father, but he left and I don't think he's gone back. He's like a doctor / scientist who is trying to find cures for diseases. He's like too busy to go back, and the children really don't know that much about this great aunt that they're being sent to, but they're really kind of just packed off in a hurry and sent. They arrive at their great aunt's house, and she is so odd to them. They can't really figure out the lay of the land. They all sort of arrive at her house, and she's like, okay, well, pick your rooms, find your bedclothes, you're on your own for meals. And they are completely lost without their mother. We really learn quickly that their mother has done a lot for them, and they are not self-sufficient. And they're kind of on their own. They're like going to the shops by themselves. They are discovering a hideaway, a stowaway in the house that the great aunt doesn't know about, and trying to figure out how to take care of him. They are, trying to navigate how to get and receive communications from their parents. It's really is this idea of a wild and free summer childhood. Next, we have Gone Away Lake. This is by Elizabeth Enright. This is the first book in a series. I think there's only 2 books, but I could be wrong. So in this, we have Julian and Portia. They are cousins. Portia is the one who has traveled to visit her cousin Julian. And again, with that same idea of this wild and free childhood summer, they go out exploring and they discover this, what they think to be is like a ghost town. It's this whole sort of like ramshackle lake community with really, from their descriptions, what would have been very lovely houses, but everyone has left, or so they think. So they get to exploring and they discover that there are 2 elderly people that are still living there. We have Mr. Peyton and Mrs. Cheever, who are siblings. And they are so excited to have these 2 young people come and visit them. They host them. And I think the only thing is you're kind of marching towards Portia and Julian really should be telling the adults in their lives that this is going on, and they're not. They're really kind of keeping it to themselves. But it does feel very much like this magical childhood in that because there's all these empty houses, they can kind of go into these houses and do like a play setup of the house and it just kind of feels like they're able to kind of build their own house, which I know as I read books about children who find little cottages, like in Mandy by Julie Andrews, or there is a hut in Coming Home by Rosamund Pilcher that is used for children to be able to have as a play area. Those kinds of things I just think are so delightful and something that I wish that I had when I was a child. So anyway, I think that's really what makes it feel so magical. So Gone Away Lake. There are also some really great middle grade books that I think are perfect for any age, and that rather than being like one story that's strung out throughout one novel, each chapter becomes its own kind of story. So we have these connected but separate vignettes. So the first recommendation that I have is actually a series, What Katie Did by Susan Coolidge. This is a little bit The Story Girl by L.M. Montgomery. It's also a little bit of Pollyanna. We also age with our character, so it also feels a little bit like In Grandma's Attic by Arletta Richardson. So it's all of that kind of combined into this 3-part series. So the first one is specifically set in the summer, and that is What Katie Did. I will say, once you read this, you tell me if the cover of her on a swing is not a very diabolical choice. When I first saw it, I was like, oh, what a lovely cover. I love the flowers and the birds, obviously. And I'm like, oh, this sweet girl, she's got her apron, just reminds you of a pinafore, and she's swinging. And then you read this book and you get to the end and you're like, oh, wow, yeah, she's swinging. Okay, got it. So in this, we follow, obviously, Katie. Katie is this impetuous, very tall girl who is the oldest sister. They have lost their mother. Their father is a doctor. They have an aunt who is an invalid. She has some sort of physical disability. She comes to visit. They have like a housekeeper type nanny person who takes care of the house. And then we go through each chapter with Katie and kind of experience life with her until there is one event that happens that upturns everybody's life. And from that point on, I think we end up without having those separate vignettes, and we've got this now theme going through regarding the plot and kind of where we're going with that. So I devoured this, and then I loved it so much that I read the other 2 books in the series. So we have What Katie Did at School, and then we have What Katie Did Next. So these are when she kind of gets older, and again, we have these little stories that are all kind of connected in them. This one is much more of like there's a plot in here where she's traveling in Europe and kind of experiencing life that way. But this whole series is really great. These are not specifically set in summer, but this one is. And so if you're looking for books that are kind of in that old-fashioned, wholesome vein, then I would recommend picking up What Katie Did Next. Next, I have Dandelion Wine by Ray Bradbury. In this, we follow Douglas Spalding as he experiences, obviously, a summer. And there are all these different stories and recollections. We really are experiencing the characters in the town. And there are these sort of whimsical, Ray Bradbury very much is like this sci-fi, somewhat fantasy writer. And so he has imbued this story with that, but in a way that feels more believable. There are so many beautiful quotes in this book. So it begins with, "It was a quiet morning, the town covered over with darkness and at ease in bed. Summer gathered in the weather. The wind had the proper touch. The breathing of the world was long and slow and warm. You only had to rise, lean from your window, and know that this indeed was the first real time of freedom and living. This was the first morning of summer." Another book that has vignettes but has this like connected story through it is The Summer Book, and that's by Tove Jansson, who I've read some of the Moomin Troll books, and have really enjoyed them. The Summer Book is different than that. We have Sophia. She's staying with her grandmother And they have this really fascinating relationship where they respect each other, they enjoy each other's company, but there is a little bit of sniping between them. There definitely is some family dysfunction in this as well. And just as a warning for anyone who's worried about like animal trauma and animal deaths, this book does have that with one of their pets. They end up getting a pet, and it doesn't end as a happily ever after. But otherwise, they're staying on this seaside coastal area, and we're just kind of going through, each chapter as they are experiencing summer. As I move on to the next category, I'm realizing that I can't talk this long for every single book because it's 20 books. So I'm going to have to move faster and hopefully be able to hook you with what I tell you. So the next book that I want to share is The Forget-Me-Not Library by Heather Weber. I have mentioned this before on my channel recently and said at that time that I would be recommending it for a summer read because I think it's perfect. I have enjoyed Heather Weber's books, the ones that I've read, but Forget-Me-Not Library is my favorite. So in this we have Juliet. Juliet is on a road trip. She is sort of honoring her grandfather who passed away recently when he was with her. And there is a significant trauma of a lightning storm hitting, and that is kind of the cause of her grandfather's death, but it is also the cause of her memory loss. So Juliet can only remember from that lightning storm timeframe on. She's reliant completely on her sister basically to help her to kind of rebuild her childhood memories. So the medical reasoning behind that is that the trauma of being with her grandfather, who she loved very much when he died, she's now kind of repressed all of those memories, and that includes all of the memories that she had with him. She loves her grandfather. It sounds like he really was kind of a stand-in parent because her parents maybe weren't always involved. Anyway, Julie's on a road trip because her grandfather talked about this road trip. As Juliet's on the highway, she ends up taking this detour to Forget-Me-Not. And her car, as it gets into town, is puffing out smoke out of the exhaust and breaks down in front of Tallulah's house. Tallulah is a newly single mother. She's living with her grandfather and with her daughter. Her daughter is just a delight. They sort of realize at that point that Juliet is meant to be staying at their house. Juliet really can't figure out why. That everybody she meets is like, well, what color was the smoke? And she tells them, they're like, oh, honey. And so there's something significant about the color of smoke that's come out of her car that's caused her to break down. This story is just such a gem. We have a cat who has these special abilities to kind of get books in your hand from the library that are meant for you. So the cat like knocks them down, and then when you pick it up, that's supposed to help you to be able to access your memories. So there's love in this. There's heartbreak. There is like a hospice type situation that is occurring as well in this story, but I loved it so much. I definitely think it's my favorite Heather Weber, and I hope that you can either pick it up or find the audio version for it. Also, so much for trying to be brief. Okay, on to the next. So also in the magical realism category, we have The Book Charmer. This is by Karen Hawkins. So books also play a prominent role in this. We have Sarah Dove. She is not your ordinary reader or librarian type person. She has this ability to sense what book it is that you need to read at that time for whatever's going on in your life. We also have Grace Wheeler, I think is her last name. She arrives in town in Dove with Daisy and also Mama G. And they are like, not really on the run, but they are definitely trying to look for a new start. We have heavier themes in this, such as PTSD. We have the onset of, I think it's Alzheimer's as well in one of the characters. And we have a town that is slowly kind of like dissipating, meaning a lot of the businesses are leaving for the bigger towns. It's kind of off the beaten track. And so Sarah, as the librarian, is like really trying to develop economic growth in the town as well. And she's just really convinced that grace is the answer to their problems. So like I said, there's PTSD, we have love interests, we have reminiscing from the past and like kind of what has brought Grace into the town with Daisy specifically. So again, very heavy themes, definitely has magical realism, but if you're looking for a book that isn't, super heavy and also a pretty fast-paced story, then I would pick up The Book Charmer. A lot of these books have family dynamics and family relationships that are core components of it. But for the next one, I think the label that I have come up with thematically is sisterhood. With that, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are blood related. In the first book, we've got Love, Ruby Lavender by Deborah Wiles. And this is a sisterhood between the girls in a small town. So we've got Ruby Lavender. She loves her grandmother so much. She has lost her grandfather the year before. And her grandmother, as part of kind of her grieving and healing process, has decided that on and around the anniversary of her husband's death, she's going to go to Hawaii. It also coincides with meeting her newest grandchild. But Ruby Lavender is very upset with this and jealous and not happy that her grandmother has left. They actually write each other letters through this whole book, and so that's why it's Love, Ruby Lavender. When I originally picked this up, I thought the relationship between Ruby and her grandmother was kind of the core part of this, but the grandmother leaves, and she leaves Ruby Lavender there to deal with another young girl in the town who just really despises Ruby Lavender. We also have a new family that has come into town, and there's a girl who kind of gets mixed into the crosshairs between these two younger girls. But there's humor in this. You can see she's got chickens here. At the very beginning, the first scene in the book is Ruby and her grandmother going to free chickens that are destined for the butcher. And it's just really amusing. And then the chickens play a very prominent role in the rest of this book. Next, we have Driftwood Summer by Patti Callahan Henry. I have read quite a few of her books. In this, we've got three sisters. We have Riley, who is the oldest. She is continuing to run the family bookshop and really kind of being there to help support her mother and just kind of keeping things on the rails. And then we have Maisie and we have Adelie. Those are the other two sisters, and they are coming into town to help celebrate the mother's birthday and then also kind of to get involved with the family bookstore because they're really struggling with keeping that going. So this book truly is sisterhood. They really are sisters. And we also, because of the parties and the celebrations, they've invited people from their past to come to this event that they're holding. And lo and behold, that means Mac Logan, who was a love interest for two of the sisters. And it has caused so much strife. And there's a lot of misunderstandings and confusion and resentment and jealousy that they need to work through in this book. And then the last one for the sisterhood theme, I have A Summer in the Country by Marcia Willett. Marcia Willett really does relationships well, and particularly dysfunction, like long-term dysfunction in relationships. And that's what we have here. In this, we have Bridget. She's living with her mother, Frumi, which is such an odd name, at least for me. I've never heard Frumi. And Frumi is so exhausting. But Bridget puts up with her. She has a younger sister named Jemima, who is also pretty prevalent in this. And they have a piece of property where people come and stay for certain periods of time. And Louise has come as her husband has gone on golf trips and he's traveling with his friends. Louise comes and stays and has in the past, and she's coming again. So we get the story of Bridget We get a lot of time with Jemima as well. So there is a true sisterhood there. And then we've got Louise, who kind of gets mixed in. And Louise is really carrying some heavy trauma. So you may want to look up content warnings for this because there is, like I said, some heaviness and guilt and pain that she's carrying as a woman. We have infidelity. We have lots of infidelity, actually, as I think about it, on all different sides. So all of that to say, there's a lot of dysfunction in here, but there also is a lot of sisterhood and healing and women supporting women. So that is a summer in the country. For YA books, I have two to recommend. The first one is The 17th Summer. This is by Maureen Daly. I got this recommendation from Susan Branch. No, I'm not friends with Susan Branch, even though I think I could be very easily, but she wrote about it in her memoir book series. And I thought, you know what, I'm gonna, she's got all these book recommendations. Many of them I was familiar with. The 17th Summer, I was not. And so our library has it. I checked it out to read it. This was written, I believe, in the 1940s. We have Angie and Jack really are kind of the main characters. This book reminded me so much of the Dirty Dancing plot, but it is not. Dirty Dancing is actually based on a different book, but there are similar themes with an older sister who makes some choices that impact the family. Angie is very much obsessed, probably isn't the right word, but very focused on Jack as someone that she really likes. And so we really do get this experience of being a teen. We've got friendships, they're going out, we kind of see what it's like to be out on the weekend. And we also get a lot of discussion about what are the next steps. Like, what's Jack going to do? What's Angie going to do? It really is your coming of age, teenage, angsty, summertime story. Again, with that more serious thread. So that is 17th Summer by Maureen Daly. The next one is more of a historical romance, and that is Under a Dancing Sky by Laura Wood. In this, we follow Bee. We are right at the onset or just prior to the onset of World War II. Bee is English. Her parents decide to send her to an Italian villa with relatives for the summer. And it's kind of interesting because the man of this villa, the father, is your British, sort of stiff upper lip, but he is connected up with this bohemian partner. She is, kind of scandalous, but he's happy with her. And so when Bee arrives, she discovers that when her parents thought they were sending her to like this chaperoned, very, on the up and up kind of a villa summer experience, she discovers that it's a bit of a free for all. They've got an artist enclave that's staying there. So a lot of these like different artists, and among them is Ben. Ben becomes Bee's love interest. And so if you like a lot of banter and flirting, then this might be an option for you. But again, we also have that historical fiction part of this because we are kind of hearing about what's happening in Italy with Mussolini. And by the end of the book, people have to make decisions based on what the war is kind of bringing everyone to do. So that is Under a Dancing Star. I think this is so great for summer. Again, Bee goes there in the summer, but it's like this hot Italian setting. The next category is mysteries. And I first am excited to mention Pamela Mansbridge. I mentioned her with the Larchwood mystery in one of my Vintage Girl Sleuth videos. I was very excited to find a British author with those Vintage Girl Sleuth vibes. And this mystery I wanted to include in this video. This is The 7th Summer. And we do have another mystery, but it's definitely more about relationships and misunderstandings than like a true mystery. Like I think the Larchwood mystery was more of like your typical Vintage Girl Sleuth mystery. So in this we have Susan. She is traveling for the 7th summer to stay with her Aunt Betty. And on the train she meets Nicola. Her mother has had to go back to France to basically collect her inheritance. And she has sent Nicola for the summer to stay with someone that she knows. But when Nicola arrives, I really just love a young woman carrying a hot and grimy looking baby. When Nicola arrives at the door, she's met with a grimy looking baby. And the woman, it's very, you know right away that the woman is kind of shady, and she's going to exploit Nicola and have her be the one who's taking care of the grimy looking baby. We also have Tony. He lives there near Aunt Betty, and so he knows Susan because she's been coming every summer. So Tony's unusual. He's very bright, but he really struggles with social interaction and like kind of what to do in interacting with people. And there's a huge mystery that happens, and a lot of, again, miscommunication, just a really cute middle grade mystery. And then I have this huge chunker because inside of this we have This Rough Magic by Mary Stewart. In This Rough Magic we have Lucy Waring. She arrives at her sister Phillida's house in Corfu. She is there because the show that she was acting in is closed and she doesn't have any other prospects, and so she figures for the summer she's just going to go and visit her sister. She also hears upon arrival that Julian, Sir Julian, who's like a famous actor, is living nearby, and she ends up meeting his son Max, as well as some other characters on the island. The thing that I love about this is it's very much a beachy ocean. We've got a dolphin. There's some magical part to the dolphin's involvement. We've got instant love. We have serious peril. Lucy herself is so brave. She puts herself in these like very courageous situations. And I think just being based in Corfu makes it feel very appropriate for summer. There also are political parts to this where we've got like the Cold War aspects to it. So a really great suspenseful romantic read. So now on to fantasy. I have 2 of my 3 fantasy books by Sarah Beth Durst. So the first one I wanted to recommend is The Faraway Inn. This is a YA novel. We have 16-year-old Kalisa, who arrives at her Auntie Z's bed and breakfast in Vermont. Her moms have sent her there. She's kind of going through this like angsty teenage broken heart kind of a situation, and they send her to Vermont for the summer. I do want to have a moment for the beautiful cover and pages of this book. I just think it's stunning. Upon arrival, she discovers that, number one, Auntie Z doesn't want her there. She's like this curmudgeonly older lady. And secondly, the B&B is not what she would have expected. There are odd things happening, like fires that are being started. You know, she's like looking at the fireplace, she looks away and looks back, and the fire is started. Tea is just like suddenly available. The guests are very unusual. She meets Jack, who is... We've got Jack, who is the son of the groundskeeper, and there's obviously like secrets going on. He's not sure where his dad is. There's all these like unusual things. But this story is so cozy. A big theme in it is learning how to ask for help. It's also about forgiveness and redemption within a family when people's feelings get hurt. Next, also wholesome, but not so cozy, we have Race the Sands. I read this while I was at the Great Sand Dunes National Park, so I was reading about racing on the sands while at the sand dunes. It was a very magical experience. But in this, we have Tamra. Tamra is a single mother, and she is, I don't want to say down and out because she would probably not agree with that, but she's really struggling. She is on her last attempt at being a successful trainer. There are these creatures, the Keyhawks. This is one here, where there are people who ride them. Keyhawks are these like sort of monster creatures that basically have done something previously in their lives that have caused them to transform into these characters, these monsters. And there are people who ride them. And so then there's like this like whole raceway culture. Whenever I close my eyes and picture this world, I think about Tatooine and Star Wars and kind of that whole like racing culture. in a very sandy planet. So this has a lot of political intrigue and danger that we kind of go along with Tamara as she's like figuring out what's going on. There are very strong female characters in this that are politically connected, that help each other out. But there is treachery, serious treachery, and you're really not sure who you can trust. This is great for summer simply because of the setting of these like hot, sandy raceway setting. All right, so next, I have Oversea Understone by Susan Cooper. This is the first book in the Dark is Rising series. This is like an Arthurian inspired middle grade fantasy series. They have won Newbery medals later on. You really should read this book first in the series to really be able to enjoy the whole series. This is a crucial part of the Green Witch book in this series, which is the third one. So in this, we have 3 children. We've got Barney, Jane, and Simon. So this is where the Arthurian legend comes in. They are on holiday in Cornwall and they find a crumbling map. And this map is supposed to be leading them to some relic that is from King Arthur's time that will be able to help secure the world from dark forces. And that's really kind of the theme throughout all of these books, is this battle between light and good and dark evil forces. And the children all sort of go along with this idea of not realizing what is actually out there as far as a dark force, and then it all kind of opens up to them. So this is important because this relic that they find ends up playing a part later on. And since this is a summer vacation in Cornwall, is how it kind of starts, then this is the perfect time to start this series if you have not started the Dark is Rising series. I have 3 books to recommend for adults for summer reading. And the first one is Foster by Claire Keegan. This is quite a short book. So this is set in Ireland during the summer. We have a young girl who is brought to a distant relative's house because her mother and father can't take care of her. The mother is expecting yet another child. The father seems to kind of be a ne'er-do-well, and they have these relatives that can take her and take care of her for the summer. They're really, at the beginning, doesn't seem to be a lot of understanding of how long she's going to be there. She really herself didn't have a lot of understanding what was going on, but she ends up being dropped at these 2 elderly people's home. I really loved this couple so much. They've had their own heartbreak. Our main character ends up needing clothes. She gets bathed so gently by this older woman, and then she needs nice fresh clothes. And so she gets clothes that were in this room that had been owned by a boy. And we go from there. There is a bit of mystery about where the clothes came from. There is a bit of past trauma for this couple. We've got nosy neighbors. We have this young girl who's like really just experiencing the world for the first time. She's lived a pretty sheltered life simply because her family does not have a lot of means. Definitely have this Irish hot summer setting. And so I think this is a good choice for a summer reading for adults. And then I also have the last 2, which I think are a bit heavier, much like Foster is heavier. We have Edith Wharton's Summer. So this is also a shorter novel as well. And this has a young girl in it who, from her younger days, was taken from her mountain village home by a man for her to go down and to work, to kind of be taken care of more than she was able to be up in the mountains. This girl has definitely, I don't know if chip on her shoulder is the right word, but she definitely has an attitude about, a negative attitude about her employer, about the man who had kind of pulled her out of poverty situation up in the mountains. He actually asks her to marry him at the beginning of the book, and she is like, no, what are you are crazy. You're older. This is not going to work. I want a job somewhere else. So she ends up getting a job in the library, and through that job in the library, she meets a young man who's more of her age, and he starts to court her, basically. not really well known to everyone in the town that he's courting. It's kind of on the sly, on the side. If you've read this, I would love to talk about the ending because I have so many thoughts about it. But again, this is not your happy-go-lucky situation. There's a lot of pain and betrayal and manipulation and being taken advantage of on all sides. So, but it is, like I said, the main love story happens during the summer. It's obviously titled Summer. So if you haven't read an Edith Wharton and you're kind of interested, but you don't want to kind of dive into any of her bigger novels, Summer is a good place to start. And again, like I said, picking it up for these next few warmer months would be the perfect time to do that. And then the next book to share is The River Muse by Laura Risaw. The first few paragraphs is like this description of France in the summer and what that's like. In this, we have Callie. Callie is fleeing from an abusive relationship. You learn that right away. She is a widowed single mother. She has Ava with her. I love her daughter so much. She is maybe my favorite character. But Callie and Ava are fleeing this abusive partner. They end up in France and in La Chanson, which is this magical, whimsical town that has a river running through it, and the river has these magical musical abilities. Callie is an indie folk singer who has kind of repressed all of that through losing her husband and then ending up in this abusive relationship. She also discovers in this town that there is this truffle feud involving the local forest, where you've got two families who are kind of fighting over the truffles growing in the forest, and there's like this whole historical background to that Callie gets ensnared in. And then, of course, she never feels safe, and that's really the theme through the whole book. I feel like I could never feel fully safe and comfortable in this beautiful French setting over the summer because we're always looking over our shoulder with Callie, fully expecting her abusive partner to show up. And I think that's probably what it really is like to flee an abusive relationship. You're never quite sure how safe you actually are. There is a tender, wholesome romance that does blossom in this little French village. So I think if you love a French setting and you are looking for something that has a little bit more meat, there is some suspense. Again, you're like kind of concerned for Callie and like, are they going to be safe? And, you know, if you're really looking for somebody who really finds herself, finds her voice again, then The River Muse is the summer choice for you. All right, there are my 20 book recommendations for the summer. Again, don't forget to check out my recommendations video from last year, which had, I think, over 25 recommendations. You can leave today with having 50 books to choose from to get on your library reserves and maybe checking thrift books to see if you can get your own copies to read this summer. I would love to hear what your favorite books are for the summer, what your recommendations would be. I'm always looking to add to my burgeoning TBR as well. So as always, thanks so much for watching, and until next time.